A waitress is fired after helping Michael Jackson, and the next day she receives news that changes her life. It was an ordinary night at the Sunshine Diner, a small eatery in Los Angeles that for years had been an obligatory stop for locals and tourists alike. Emily, a 26-year-old, had been working there for almost 2 years. With her hair up in a ponytail and her apron already faded from daily use, she ran from table to table balancing plates and cups. Always smiling, she was well liked by regular customers, but she hid something that no one noticed: the weight of dreams deferred. Emily dreamed of being a singer. As a teenager, she wrote songs and performed at small parties, but life was hard. The bills came before the fame, and the dream was put on the shelf. Despite this, she never stopped believing that something special was in store for her. That night, the diner was quiet. The jukebox played soft 80s music and the customers chatted quietly. Emily was cleaning a table near the window when she heard the doorbell ring. It was late, almost 9 p.m., and usually no new customers came in at that time. She looked towards the entrance and saw a man who looked out of place. He wore sunglasses, even though the room was poorly lit, and a wide-brimmed hat that almost covered his face. There was something familiar about him, but Emily couldn't identify what it was. He walked to a table in the corner, alone and with light steps, as if he wanted to go unnoticed. Emily felt an inexplicable curiosity. Something about his posture intrigued her, but she didn't have time to think too much. She adjusted her apron, picked up her notepad and walked over to him. As she approached, the man raised his head slightly and, for a moment, she thought she recognized that face. Her heart beat faster, but she disguised it. "Good evening, what can I get you?" she asked with a polite smile. He replied in a soft, almost whispery voice, ordering something simple, a coffee and a slice of pie. The request was ordinary, but there was something extraordinary about the presence. Emily had no idea that she had just served the king of pop. She went back to the counter to get her order, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. Fate, at that moment, was beginning to chart a course that would change her life forever. Emily returned to the table with the order, a cup of hot coffee and a slice of apple pie. As she placed the items in front of the customer, she couldn't help but notice his hands, covered in black gloves, and the restrained way in which he thanked her, almost as if he wanted to avoid attracting attention. The waitress tried to return to her routine, but her mind was restless. There was something about that man that deeply intrigued her. He seemed to observe every detail around him, as if he were absorbing his surroundings, but at the same time avoiding any prolonged eye contact with the other people in the place. With his every move, Emily felt the different energy he brought to the place. Back at the counter, Emily felt the gaze of her colleagues. The cook, a gentleman called Tom, whispered something about the mysterious customer, commenting that he looked familiar. Even the other employees looked uncomfortable, as if they were witnessing something out of the ordinary, but no one dared to speculate too much. As the night wore on, more customers left the diner, until there were only Emily, the man with the sunglasses, and Tom, who was about to finish his shift. Silence filled the place, broken only by the sound of the jukebox that continued to play softly. The air seemed charged with a tension that Emily couldn't explain. When the man had finished his meal, he got up discreetly, went to the counter and handed over the cash payment, adding a generous tip. But before leaving, he hesitated. He seemed to be considering whether or not to say something. He then turned to Emily, slightly removed his sunglasses, revealing his expressive eyes, and thanked her in such a kind and sincere way that it almost seemed rehearsed. As he left, Emily stood still, as if time had slowed down. There was something undeniably captivating about that moment. She didn't know it yet, but she had just crossed Michael Jackson's path. The only certainty she had was that this night would be unlike any other in her life. As soon as he left the venue, Tom walked up to Emily with a perplexed look on his face. Wordlessly, he pointed to the door through which the man had left. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. Everything seemed surreal, as if she had just witnessed something magical, but she still didn't fully understand what it meant. Emily was still absorbed in the strangeness of the moment when she realized that the mysterious customer had left something on the table. It was a small leather wallet, apparently forgotten in the rush. Without a second thought, she picked it up and ran for the door. Outside, the night breeze was cool and the street was almost deserted. Emily looked both ways, trying to spot the man, but he had already disappeared. Back in the diner, She opened her purse just enough to look for an ID card. Her eyes widened when she saw a name that made her heart race: Michael Jackson. She stood there in disbelief, trying to make sense of the situation. The gloves, the glasses, the soft voice, it all made sense now. Emily wasn't an ardent fan, but she knew exactly who he was, and the impact of this discovery left her speechless. Tom, the cook, peeked over her shoulder and let out a surprised whistle. He immediately suggested that Emily keep the wallet carefully and deliver it in person the next day. However, before they could discuss the plan, a black car pulled up in front of the diner. An elegant man, wearing an impeccable suit, got out of the vehicle and entered the place with determined steps. He introduced himself as Michael Jackson's security guard and explained that the singer had noticed the wallet was missing and had sent someone to collect it. Emily handed it over without hesitation, but before the security guard left, she plucked up the courage to do something she would never have imagined. She asked him to thank Michael personally for trusting her. The security guard just nodded and left quickly, leaving Emily with a mixture of relief and elation. But it didn't take long for the relief to turn into tension. A few minutes later, the cafeteria manager appeared, clearly irritated. He had received a call from a customer complaining that Emily had left the restaurant without permission to stalk someone in the street. The manager's tone of voice was dry and merciless. He accused Emily of breaking company protocol, claiming that her attitude had compromised the security of the place. With no room for explanation, he announced her dismissal right there in front of everyone. Emily tried to argue, but her words went unheard. The injustice of the situation left her with a lump in her throat, but she still left with her head held high, taking with her the certainty that she had done the right thing. That night, in her small apartment, Emily cried. She felt defeated, jobless, and without prospects. But deep down in her soul, there was a spark of hope. Something told her that the universe still had a surprise for her. Emily spent the night staring at the ceiling of the small apartment she was renting. The humiliation of her dismissal echoed in her mind like a repetitive, suffocating track. She had been wrongly accused, and all she had done was try to help. Her head was weighed down with questions. Would someone like Michael Jackson even know what had happened? And if he did, would it make any difference? For the first time in a long time, Emily felt completely lost. She thought about her bills piled up on the kitchen table, the overdue rent, and the lack of prospects for the future. Each of these worries seemed to shout louder than the next. But in the midst of all the chaos, something strange happened. Every time she closed her eyes, the image of Michael Jackson appeared. Not as the world's star, but as the calm, almost vulnerable man who had thanked her so kindly. As dawn broke over the city, Emily finally gave in to tiredness. A light doze was interrupted by the insistent ringing of her phone. It was a call from an unknown number. Her heart racing, she answered. On the other end of the line, a professional voice introduced herself as Michael Jackson's personal assistant. The assistant explained that Michael had heard about what had happened and wanted Emily to know that he was deeply grateful for her help. Emily could hardly believe her ears. But before she could react, the assistant paused and mentioned something that left her in shock. Michael wanted to meet her in person. The assistant informed her that a car would be sent to pick her up that afternoon. Still processing what had just happened, Emily sat down on the sofa, the phone still in her hand. For an instant, all her worries disappeared, replaced by a mixture of nervousness and excitement. The moment seemed surreal, almost like a dream. But deep down, Emily also felt fear. She feared it was all a mistake or, worse, a bad joke. Even so, she decided to accept the invitation. She put on her best, albeit simple, clothes and waited anxiously for the car. When it finally arrived, it was a shiny black sedan that looked like it had just come out of a movie. The driver greeted her with a polite smile and opened the door for her. As the car drove away from her modest neighborhood, Emily felt as if she was leaving behind not only a place, but also a part of herself that was stuck in mediocrity. She didn't know what awaited her, but one thing was certain: that day would mark the beginning of something extraordinary. Emily could feel her heart beating fast as the car sped through the luxurious streets of Los Angeles. The contrast with her small apartment was stark. The imposing houses, surrounded by impeccable gardens, seemed out of this world. Despite her growing enthusiasm, the shadow of her dismissal still hung over her. Emily wondered how she would explain her situation if Michael really did take her on. After all, she was just a waitress, now without a job, with no direction. The car finally stopped in front of a high gate, which opened automatically. She entered a property that looked like a mixture of an amusement park and a peaceful sanctuary. The driver indicated that she should follow the road to a small side entrance. Her footsteps echoed as she climbed the steps, more and more hesitantly. Opening the door, Emily was greeted by an elegant woman, who seemed to be the assistant mentioned earlier. With a warm smile, the woman led her down a corridor decorated with pictures and trophies telling the story of the King of Pop. Every detail seemed magical and surreal, but Emily struggled not to feel intimidated. The assistant led her into a large room, illuminated by the soft light coming through the tall windows. In the center, on a luxurious sofa, was Michael Jackson. He looked serene, almost ethereal, and when he saw her, he stood up with a gentle smile. Emily tried to contain her nervousness, but her hands were shaking slightly. It was impossible not to feel small in front of someone so great. Michael thanked her personally for her help the night before. He explained that his life was surrounded by challenges and that even in simple situations, such as going to a cafeteria, he needed to be cautious. Emily's gesture of returning the wallet had touched his heart deeply, showing that there were still genuine people in the world. As he spoke, Emily felt overwhelmed by a mixture of gratitude and relief. His good deed had not gone unnoticed. But before she could respond, Michael mentioned something that left her paralyzed. He knew about her dismissal. Emily tried to downplay the situation, saying that everything would be fine, but Michael interrupted her. With his soft, firm voice, he assured her that this was not the end, but a new beginning. He knew exactly what it was like to be unfairly judged, and he wanted her to know that the right doors always open for those who keep kindness in their hearts. As Michael spoke, Emily realized that what she had seen as her darkest night was turning into a turning point. At that moment, she began to believe that perhaps something greater was being prepared for her. After her conversation with Michael Jackson, Emily was led back to the car that would take her home. Still in shock, she stared out of the window, trying to process everything that had happened. Michael had not only recognized her kindness, but also comforted her at a time when she felt defeated. His words resonated in her mind. The right doors always open for those who keep kindness in their hearts. The next morning, Emily's phone rang earlier than usual. Still with the hoarse voice of someone who has barely slept, she answered. On the other end of the line, a formal professional voice informed her that there was a special invitation waiting for her. The call came from a charitable foundation run by Michael Jackson's team. The invitation was to attend an exclusive charity event that he would be holding that evening. Emily almost dropped the phone. The voice continued, explaining that Michael had insisted on her presence and that she would have a special role on the occasion. Even though she didn't understand what this special role meant, she accepted without hesitation. The opportunity seemed surreal, as if the universe was conspiring to make something extraordinary happen. With the invitation confirmed, Emily realized that she needed to be prepared for the evening. With no money to buy something new, she rummaged through the small closet in her bedroom. After much searching, she found a simple but elegant dress that she had worn years ago to a special party. She adjusted the details and did her best to look confident. When the car sent by Michael's team arrived at her apartment door again, Emily felt her heart race. This time, the driver took her to an even more impressive venue, a large event hall decorated with twinkling lights and vibrant energy. People from all over the world were there, united in a common cause. Upon entering, Emily felt as if she were stepping into a dream. The event had it all: celebrities, entrepreneurs, and an atmosphere of hope and generosity. But the most surprising moment was yet to come. During the opening speech, Michael Jackson took to the stage. He spoke about the importance of kindness and how small acts can transform lives, not only for those who receive them, but also for those who perform them. As he spoke, Michael paused and looked directly at Emily, who was among the guests. He told the audience the story of the waitress who, even in the midst of difficulties, chose to help someone without expecting anything in return. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Emily, who felt her face heat up. It was as if, for the first time, she was really being seen. The spotlight was on Emily, and the attention of everyone in the room made her heart race. Sitting at a table near the stage, she could hardly believe what was happening. Michael Jackson, the biggest star in the world, was sharing her story in a tone so sincere and moving that it sounded like a fairy tale. After finishing his speech, Michael asked Emily to come on stage. She hesitated, but the applause from the audience encouraged her. Each step to the stage seemed to take forever, But when she finally got there, Michael welcomed her with a warm smile and a brief but meaningful hug. Michael explained that, as well as wanting to honor her publicly, he had something special to offer. He revealed that the charity event that evening also marked the launch of a new project, a program aimed at supporting young artistic talent. The aim was to offer opportunities to people who, like Emily, had big dreams but faced barriers to achieving them. Michael then turned to her and, in his soft voice, said that he wanted her to be the first beneficiary of the project. He officially invited her to take part in a series of workshops and musical performances that would be held by his team, with expert mentors. It was a chance to reconnect with the dream she had harbored for so long. Emily was stunned. Her hands were shaking as she held the microphone that Michael had placed in her hand. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. After a moment of silence, she managed to say thank you. Her voice was hoarse, but the audience responded with more applause, as if to say that they were rooting for her. Michael, realizing the impact of the moment, concluded by saying that Emily was a living example that kindness always finds a way back. He mentioned that her courage in doing what was right, even when facing the consequences, was an inspiration that the world needed to hear. When she came down from the stage, the room looked different. Emily was no longer just a waitress without a job. She now carried the hope of something new, something that could completely change the course of her life. It was the first time in a long time that she felt like she belonged somewhere. As the guests came up to her to congratulate her, Emily finally realized that this was the answer she had been waiting for. The universe had indeed prepared something bigger for her, and it all started with a small gesture of kindness. As the event continued, Emily felt as if she was living a completely different reality from her ordinary life. The guests, who had previously been complete strangers, now approached her with curiosity and admiration. Every word of encouragement she heard reinforced the feeling that this moment was not just a dream, but the start of something truly special. After a while, one of Michael Jackson's assistants came up to Emily and asked her to accompany him. With her heart racing, she was taken to a private room backstage. There was Michael, now in a more intimate and relaxed atmosphere. He welcomed her with a genuine smile and asked her to sit down. Despite the magnitude of who he was, Michael had a welcoming manner, almost as if he were talking to an old friend. He began by thanking her again for her gesture the night before, but went further. Michael explained that he knew from experience how small acts of kindness could make a huge difference. He then revealed that, after learning of Emily's dismissal, he felt personally responsible for ensuring that she had an opportunity to start again. Michael shared an idea with her. He wanted Emily to be part of the creative team of a new music project he was developing. Not just as someone behind the scenes, but as one of the voices that would help bring new compositions to life. It was a rare invitation, something he only offered to those he really trusted. Emily was speechless. Her mind flashed back to the days when she sang at small parties where the audience barely paid attention. Now, the chance to work alongside someone so legendary was something she could never have imagined. Her life, which had seemed in ruins 24 hours earlier, was now full of possibilities. Before she could respond, Michael made a point of reassuring her. He said that he understood how frightening rapid change could be and assured her that she would have the support she needed to make the most of this new journey. He also mentioned that his team was already taking care of practical matters, such as helping her with housing and financial resources until she could settle in. When Emily was finally able to speak, her words were full of emotion. She was deeply grateful, not just for the opportunity, but for being seen and valued in a way she had never experienced before. Michael just smiled and said that she deserved all that and more. That evening, as Emily left the event, she felt something she had lost for a long time: hope. She realized that this moment was not only about the kindness she had shown, but also about the kindness that existed in the world, and that sometimes it came from the most unexpected people. On returning home that evening, Emily felt that she had undergone a transformation. The girl who had left her small apartment that morning, bearing the scars of injustice and disappointment, was no longer the same. Instead of uncertainty, there was now a mixture of excitement and determination. Over the next few days, Emily plunged headlong into her new opportunity. Michael's team welcomed her warmly and, for the first time, she saw her talent treated with respect and admiration. The creative program she was included in was much more than just a job. It was a space for learning and growth. There, she felt part of something bigger, a cog in a machine that created art and touched lives. Michael, true to his word, followed Emily's progress closely. He was not only a mentor, but also a constant source of inspiration. During work sessions, he would share stories from his own journey, talking about the times he was underestimated and the difficulties he faced in achieving success. These stories not only strengthened Emily, but also made her realize that all great dreams come with challenges. While working on the project, Emily discovered more about herself. Her passion for music, which had been stifled by years of struggle, now shone through in full force. For the first time, she saw her compositions come to life, performed by talented artists and shaped by the vision of a genius like Michael Jackson. Every day, she felt that she was rebuilding not only her career, but also her self-esteem. News of Emily's transformation began to spread. Friends and acquaintances who had lost touch with her were surprised to see her alongside Michael Jackson at events and performances. Even former colleagues from the Sunshine Diner began to recognize her as someone who had transcended the reality that many believed to be permanent. But the most exciting moment came when Emily was invited to perform live at a charity event organized by Michael. It was the first time her voice would be heard by such a large audience. As she took to the stage, she thought of the girl who waited tables and dreamed of something bigger, without ever imagining that this dream could come true. With the first note, silence overtook the auditorium. His voice filled the space, full of emotion and truth. When the last note echoed, the audience burst into applause. Emily knew that this was the beginning of a new phase in her life. After the emotional performance, Emily received a standing ovation from an audience that included some of the biggest figures in entertainment. But for her, the most special moment was when Michael Jackson came up to her and hugged her with a sincere smile, saying how proud he was of her journey. At that moment, Emily realized that her life had completely turned around. From that event onwards, Emily became a living example of resilience and kindness. Not only did she rebuild her life, but she also found her voice, both literally and figuratively. Her story began to circulate, touching the hearts of people facing similar difficulties. She began to be invited to share her experience in interviews and events, where she always made a point of highlighting the transformative power of small acts of kindness. Michael continued to support her in her career, but also gave Emily room to shine on her own. Over time, she released her own songs, many of which became hits thanks to their authenticity and emotion. In her compositions, she always made a point of including messages of hope, inspired by what she had learned along her journey. The former waitress, who once found herself jobless and aimless, was now an accomplished woman, known for her music and her story of overcoming. She never forgot the moment she was fired, but she never held a grudge either. For Emily, that episode was the start of a journey that led her to discover her true purpose. Whenever she was asked what else she had learned from all this, Emily had a simple but powerful answer: kindness always finds a way back. It was the phrase she repeated to herself every time life seemed difficult, and it was also the phrase she hoped to leave as a legacy for everyone who heard her story. In the end, Emily knew that fate had put Michael Jackson in her path, not only to change her life, but also so that she could change the lives of many others. And as his music echoed around the world, she felt that she had finally found the place where she had always belonged. Kindness always finds a way back, doesn't it? If you like this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who needs this inspiration today.